Harry here to talk about the likelihood and timing of charges from Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. To cut to the chase, the likelihood is high and the timing is July, August, from July to early September. All right, how do we know this? First, recall she had said way back in January that she was going to bring charges. They were imminent. Probably wishes she hadn't said that and had to scramble and kind of walk it back. But people who know Georgia practice were always focused on the beginning of periods when new grand juries sit. And that's because the Speedy Trial Act, we don't have to dig deep into this, but it begins to run at the beginning of the session for a grand jury. So if a grand jury brings an indictment at the end of their session, that early time counts against the prosecution in its speedy trial obligations. So it's prudent to do it this way. So people were looking at May, but then Fani Willis made a fairly significant announcement, if reading through the tea leaves, and that was to recuse one of the lawyers. And that was because this lawyer was representing 10 people. And some of them were saying in meetings, that guy did it, but I didn't do it. In other words, a perfect case for cooperation. And moreover, supposedly the lawyer wasn't passing that along, immunity overtures and the like, which is a dereliction. That is still to be worked out, and there's a kind of a food fight between the two of them. But it told us that Fani Willis was looking to garner cooperators and bring them on board. At the time, I thought that meant that the May possibility would go by the boards, and indeed it has. Because yesterday, Fani Willis reports that charges are expected between about July 10th and September 10th. In other words, the beginning of a July grand jury or the beginning of a September grand jury. So that's the first thing it tells us, that she'd be aiming for the beginning of a grand jury. The second thing it tells us is that a second thing it tells us is the charges are very likely, because she styled this announcement as a kind of circular to law enforcement, telling them to prepare, because she expected that the charges could really generate a significant public response. Now, it's very unlikely that a decision not to do anything would generate such a response. The thuggery that everyone expects would come in the event that there were charges, and that included Trump. So remember, she has sort of two cases she's building simultaneously, one against Georgia officials and one to include Trump, maybe Mark Meadows, maybe Lindsey Graham, maybe Rudy Giuliani. So she's telegraphing that she intends right now to bring charges. She intends to bring them between July and September, meaning either fairly early in the July grand jury or fairly early in the September. And there's a subtext here that I think is pretty important, because it's telling cooperators, to the extent you've been kind of negotiating and being tentative, the train is leaving the station. And if you want to be on it, you better be on it now. So picture these 10 electors represented by that one council, phony electors. Presumably there's a handful or more who could testify against the real leaders of the group, plead relative ignorance and say, but this guy obviously knew that we weren't legit. He said this or she said that. That's ready-made to cooperate. But if you cooperate, you want to be first there so you can have a reduction in sentence. If you're not first, you don't get the same consideration, and there can come a point where they don't even need you anymore. So Willis's announcement is a way of lighting a fire under would-be cooperators. And I think that's the biggest loose end she has to tie up. There are some indications. There's a few other procedural things, but she really, as best we can tell from the outside, wants to shore up the Georgia case against the phony electors and maybe have them cooperate not simply against one another, but against, say, Mark Meadows or Rudy Giuliani, the people who came down to Georgia and jawbone them to try to be fraudulent about the election results. So we have timing, and I think we can pretty well take it to the bank. She'll look so unprofessional if, something totally bizarre could happen, but otherwise we can expect it in the summer. We can expect it to be big charges. That is to say, many defendants. Recall that the special grand jury recommended charges against some 15 or so. And we can expect it to act as an immediate inducement to get lawyers of possible cooperators to run to the door and say, me first, me first. I'm ready to cooperate and get a reduced sentence. All pretty big news about Fulton County, even if it means something more of a delay. Potentially, they'll be neck and neck with the Mar-a-Lago case if, as people, including I, have surmised, that one is nearly ready to bring as well. Okay, so Fulton County coming big, coming broad, coming wide, but not coming for a couple months. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.